Vela had once been called the Garden of the Outer Rim. Its rivers glittered with silver-blue waters, its forests breathed life into every corner of the planet, and its people had built shining cities that touched the clouds. The Galactic Union boasted of Vela as proof of its benevolence, a jewel among the stars. But when the plague came, the jewel was dropped and forgotten. It began as whispers. Sickness spreading in the mining districts, children with glassy eyes, workers collapsing in the fields. Then the whispers became screams. The plague devoured lungs, boiled blood, and spread through touch. It was swift, merciless, and clearly no natural disease. Scientists traced its origin back to a Raider bioweapon deliberately unleashed to cripple Vela's defenses. The Velans called for aid. They begged their union. Their messages were desperate, frantic. "We are loyal citizens. We are part of the Union. Send doctors, send fleets, send anything," the Union heard. And the Union decided. Vela was quarantined, sealed off from trade and contact. No fleets were dispatched, no medicines delivered. The Union broadcast its decree coldly. For the preservation of galactic stability, the system of Vela is declared unviable. All communication with Vela is prohibited. Survivors may attempt evacuation at their own risk. To the Union, it was a lost cause. To the galaxy, Vela was already a grave. Days bled into months. The plague ravaged families, leaving streets filled with silence and ash. The once proud cities crumbled as food ran short, power grids failed, and the sick coughed themselves into the arms of death. Starvation followed sickness, and despair became the air itself. Yet, even worse than the hunger and the plague was the truth carved into every survivor's heart. They had been abandoned. The people of Vela stopped sending messages after a while. They stopped begging for help that would never come. Until the day strange ships appeared in the sky. They were not Union vessels. They were smaller, boxier, armored with rugged plating that bore scars of old battles. Their engines burned bright, but not sleek like Union designs, more like fire-forged steel, purposeful and stubborn. The banners painted on their hulls were alien to most. A blue and white insignia, a stylized globe of green and ocean wrapped by a human hand. Terrans. Humanity. The Union had written Earth off as little more than a backwater species, newly spacefaring, brash, unrefined, and insignificant. What was humanity compared to the ancient cultured civilizations of the galaxy? A minor voice at the edge of the grand chorus. That was the Union's view. But the Velans saw something different that day. The Terran fleet didn't hover and watch. They landed. Cargo bays opened. Human soldiers poured out, wearing masks and armor against the plague. Behind them came crates of food, pallets of water, medicine, and mobile hospitals. Where the Union closed its doors, humans forced theirs open. The first Velan elder to approach asked the question, trembling on every lip. "Why? Why are you here? The Union left us. Why risk yourselves?" A Terran commander, scarred across the cheek, answered without hesitation. "Because you called for help, and because no one deserves to die alone." For the first time in years, hope flickered in Velan eyes. The plague was vicious, but the humans fought it with stubborn will. They treated the sick, burning fevers down with drugs hastily adapted from Terran medicine. They distributed food, grain bread, synthetic protein, anything they had, to the starving families. They guarded the streets, rifles ready when Raider ships dared return to scavenge what remained. Terran pilots chased them off with fury that startled even the hardened Velan militias. And still, the people asked, "Why do this? You are not Velan." A human doctor, exhausted, sleeves stained with blood, whispered to a dying child, "Because no one is not worth saving." The words spread across the city like fire. Soon, they weren't just words. They were banners, painted on crumbling walls, whispered in prayers, carried like light through the darkness. The Valens had been abandoned by the galaxy, but humanity had not abandoned them. Weeks turned into months. The humans bled with them, starved with them, buried their dead beside theirs. Where Union broadcasts once said, "You are lost," Terrans answered, "You are not alone." And for every funeral pyre, humanity stood shoulder to shoulder, mourning as if the dead were their own. When the plague finally burned itself out, slowed by medicine, starved by quarantine, fought back by human resilience, the survivors looked upon the Terrans and saw not outsiders but kin. They had suffered together, fought together, endured together. Word of Vela's survival broke through the galaxy like thunder. The Union fumed, embarrassed, demanding to know why humans had violated quarantine orders. Humanity's answer came from Earth's High Council, broadcast openly for all to hear. "You left them to die. We chose to live with them. Their fate is now tied to ours. Vela will never stand alone again. With them, forever." The galaxy mocked it at first, dismissing it as human sentimentality, a dramatic gesture from a young species trying to make a name for itself. But beneath the laughter was unease. For the first time, someone had broken the Union's cold calculations. For the first time, a species had declared loyalty above politics, compassion above survival. The Velans rebuilt their cities, not as subjects of the Union, but as allies of Earth. Their banners flew side by side, the stylized globe of humanity and the golden crest of Vela. Trade flowed, culture mixed, and families intermarried. What began as rescue became something deeper: unity. Generations later, children born of Velan and human blood told the story of the day when all others turned away, but one species came. The story began with despair, but ended with a promise. They were left to die by the galaxy, until humanity stood and said, "With you, forever." And the galaxy listened, because promises like that were rare, and once spoken by humanity, they were unbreakable. The war for Kareth began with fire. Kareth was not a rich world. It had no jewels in its soil, no vast mines of rare metals, no factories producing fleets. It was, however, a border world, an outpost between the reaches of the Galactic Council and the lawless wilds beyond. And that made it valuable to invaders. The enemy came like shadows across the stars, an alliance of raiders and mercenaries who wanted Kareth for its location, its shipyards, and its people. The first fleets that fell upon the system numbered in the thousands. Kareth called for aid. Its governors pleaded. Its military sent every signal. "We cannot hold! We are under siege! We are loyal to the Council! Send reinforcements!" The Council answered, but not with ships, with words. Strategic withdrawal, they called it. Kareth's system was deemed untenable. Defending it would drain resources better spent elsewhere. The message was simple and merciless. Survive if you can. The Council cannot save you. And then, the fleets left. The Carethian Defense Force fought alone. Their warships were old, their crews too few, their weapons too weak. They fought anyway. They fought until their fleets were burning husks, until their skies were filled with fire. The people of Kareth looked upward and saw their guardians broken, their homes left naked beneath the storm. Panic swept the planet. Refugees crowded into crumbling bunkers, children cried in the streets, and families built makeshift rafts to flee into the void on anything that could fly. The raiders descended, slaughtering those who resisted, dragging captives in chains to their ships. Kareth's pleas to the Council were met with silence. To the galaxy, Kareth was already gone, a forgotten system, another graveyard of broken promises, until the Terrans came. Humanity's arrival was almost laughable to the Council. Earth was new to the galactic stage, barely a century past its first. Warp drives, with fleets dwarfed by the ancient powers. Yet, when the cries of Kareth reached them, the Terrans did not deliberate, did not hesitate, did not weigh profit against cost. They came. The first Terran battleships tore through the void with shields battered but unyielding. Their hulls bore names like Resolute, Valiant, Liberty. Their crews were not mercenaries, not political pawns, but soldiers who had volunteered, knowing they might never return. When the Carethians saw them descend into orbit, they thought it a dream. When they saw Terran Marines land in their cities, distributing weapons to civilians, setting up triage centers, fortifying defenses, they realized someone had not abandoned them. The humans did not promise victory. They promised something far rarer, that Kareth would not die alone. The Terrans fought with a fury Kareth had never seen. Human warships stood between raider fleets and the convoys of fleeing civilians. They burned in the skies, shields collapsing, yet held the line long enough for transports to escape. Pilots whispered final messages before ramming enemy ships. Soldiers held streets until their last bullet, their last breath, their last heartbeat. The Carethians begged them to flee. "Save yourselves!" they cried. "We are already lost!" But the Terrans only answered with the same words every time, spoken through blood and fire. "If you fall, we fall with you." And in those words, Kareth found something stronger than reinforcements. They found hope. A broken fleet of Carethian. Survivors, their ships limping and half dead, regrouped under Terran command. For the first time, they fought not as the abandoned, but as the defended. Side by side, Terran and Carethian warships ambushed raider supply lines, sabotaged enemy strongholds, and struck with a ferocity that stunned their enemies. The invaders, who had thought Kareth easy prey, now bled under the combined banner of human and Carethian defiance. The war lasted months. Cities were destroyed, millions died, but millions more survived because humanity had chosen to stand where no one else would. And then the galaxy noticed. The council convened in glittering halls, debating in cool voices how best to manage the Terran overreach. They spoke of humanity as reckless, sentimental, foolishly idealistic. To them, Earth's choice was madness. Why sacrifice lives for a system that brought no wealth, no strategic advantage, nothing but ashes? But in the dark corners of the galaxy, among the species who had long suffered under the Council's cold logic, whispers began. The humans fight for those who cannot fight alone. When the final battle for Kareth came, the Terran fleet was down to half its strength. The Carethian navy was little more than wreckage welded together. But they fought anyway. Terran carriers shielded evacuation convoys until their hulls cracked apart. Human Marines stormed enemy command ships in suicidal boarding runs. And when the last raider flagship fled the system, broken and bleeding, the survivors of Kareth looked upon the burning sky and saw, not defeat, but deliverance. Kareth was not conquered. Kareth lived. When Terran High Command broadcast their message to the galaxy, it was not the polished, cold decree of the Council. It was simple, raw, and unshakable. Kareth called for aid. You turned away. We answered. Their fight is our fight. Their survival is our survival. We will not leave them. Not now, not ever. With them, forever. The Council scoffed. But the people of Kareth wept. For the first time, they had allies who did not measure worth in profit, who did not abandon them to the stars. The bond forged in those months became legend. Kareth rebuilt, not under the Council's shadow, but under Terran protection. Their fleets bore both banners, the sunburst of Carith and the globe of Earth, flying together as a promise written in fire and blood. And in time, when other worlds were abandoned, when other cries for help went unanswered, the galaxy remembered Careth, and they whispered of the Terrans, the reckless, the stubborn, the loyal to the end. The galaxy had left Careth to die. Humanity had stood beside them and said the words no one else dared, with you, forever, and forever began that day. The Liari were a gentle people. Their songs could make forests sway, their art shimmer with living light. They had no great armies, no towering fleets, no hunger for conquest. They lived among their oceans and starlit plains, content in their homeworld's embrace, until the storm came. It was not war, not plague, but a cosmic disaster, a wave of stellar instability that rippled through their sector. Suns flared, planets cracked, and the Liari's home star boiled into madness. Their world, once a paradise, became a furnace. They fled. Millions crowded into arc ships, vast hollowed hulls not built for war, not built for speed, but for survival. They carried what they could, seeds, songs, children, and memory, and they cried out to the galaxy for help. The galaxy heard them, and the galaxy closed its doors. The council debated the Liari question in grand halls, voices as cold as the metal around them. They weighed costs, resources, probabilities. Resettling. An entire species is wasteful. They contribute little to galactic stability. They will drain more than they give. The verdict was silence. World after world turned the Liari away. Refugee fleets drifted at system edges, begging for landing rights, only to be denied. Children starved in the void. Diseases spread through overcrowded ships. Their leaders broadcast desperate pleas. We will work. We will pay. We will build. Just give us soil to stand upon, sky to breathe beneath. No one answered. The galaxy, in all its shining unity, abandoned them. The Liari became a people of ghosts. They drifted, broken and scattered, until their ships were dim with failing power. And when hope flickered out, when despair became heavier than hunger, they prepared to vanish quietly into the stars. That was when the Terrans came. Human ships arrived not with ultimatums, not with borders drawn, but with open hangars and supply bays. Their insignia, Earth's blue and green sphere wrapped in a hand, was unfamiliar to the Liari, but their actions needed no translation. They docked with failing arc ships, repaired life support systems, delivered food and medicine. The first, words spoken by a Terran captain to the Liari leaders were simple, and they shattered centuries of silence. Come with us. You are welcome. The Liari wept. Entire families collapsed to the deck floors, crying not from fear, but from relief. They had been wandering shadows, and suddenly someone had seen them. Humanity did more than save ships. They offered land. On Earth and across Terran colonies, entire regions were set aside for the Liari. Oceanside cities rose where Liari could sing to the tides again. Schools taught both human and Liari children side by side. Human engineers rebuilt their starships, not as arcs of desperation, but as vessels of exploration. When asked why, humanity's leaders did not speak in council jargon or calculated logic. They stood before the galaxy and declared for all to hear, "Where others abandoned you, we bind our fate to yours, with you forever." The council laughed. The ancient powers sneered. "Naive," they said, "sentimental, foolish. Why waste resources on a people with nothing to offer?" But in the streets of Liari settlements, children played again. Songs returned to the air. And among the Liari, a saying was born. Humanity gave us more than homes. They gave us back ourselves. Not all accepted easily. There were struggles, cultural divides, mistrust from those who had known only rejection. Some Liari feared dependence, feared betrayal. But the Terrans did not treat them as burdens. They treated them as family. When raiders came, seeking to prey on the weak refugees, they met Terran warships standing guard. The message was clear, written in plasma fire. Touch them, and you touch us. Over years, the bond deepened. Liari architects wove their art into Terran cities, making skylines sing with light. Human scientists studied Liari biology and cured diseases that had plagued them for centuries. And Liari poets immortalized the day humans had reached out their hands when all others turned away. One verse became legend, whispered across refugee camps and later carved into monuments. When the galaxy shut its gates, we drifted, silent, lost. When even hope grew cold, they found us, and said, not as rulers, not as masters, but as kin, with you, forever. Generations. Later, the galaxy looked again and saw something it had not expected. Humanity had not collapsed under the burden of the Liari. Together, they had built stronger than before. Their alliance produced ships of unmatched beauty and resilience, blending Terran steel with Liari living light designs. Their combined fleets stood not as conquerors, but as guardians. When the Council faced its next great crisis, whispers ran through its halls. Not about ancient empires, not about mighty warlords, but about humans. About the people who had taken in the abandoned and made them family. For the Liari, there was no debate. Earth was no longer just an ally. It was home. And so the story passed into legend, the tale of a people abandoned by all, left to die in silence, until one species stood, stubborn and fierce, and said the words that bound two destinies together with, you, forever. And forever, it turned out, was only the beginning.